So Fable 5 is back, but it's back on a leash. People are already saying that it came back nerfed, that it keeps switching to Opus on many tasks, and that it's significantly more restricted than it was before. Whether it's true or not, that's not the topic of this video. The topic of this video is that every frontier model will now have to go through Washington before it's released. The government will now be reviewing every big model release before it goes to public. And that's the start of a new age where best AI is gated, reviewed, and only accessible to select few. Or at the very least, not available from day one to you or in the full capability. Let's break it down. So let me show you the post right on the Anthropic's website. Fable 5 is back online globally as of July 1st. So if you used it before, you got it back. Fable is included up to 50% of your weekly usage limits through July 7th. After that, it runs on usage credits. And to be fair, it's a strong model, top of the leaderboard. A lot of people are happy that it came back. But scrolling down, there's a section which they call timeline and a safeguard updates. And reading through it line by line, they wrote it about themselves. The new safety filter, in their words, comes at the cost of flagging benign requests more often during routine coding and debugging tasks. So it's back, but on a tighter leash, much tighter than it already was on before. Now, some people are saying it's not as tight, but still, it's definitely tighter than it was before. And when it was released initially, people were already complaining that it would stop and not do certain tasks for them. And this complaint is even confirmed by Anthropic themselves, because they're saying in their words that Fable will instead be sent to Opus 4.8, and you'll get a notice when it happens. But the reason that it came back at all is very well articulated in the article. So what they're saying is that they're partnering with the US government on frontier AI security. Read what they signed up for. They agreed to give designated government partners expanded early access to both the models and the safeguards before the public gets them, and to dedicate Anthropic technical staff to work alongside government evaluators. So basically, their own engineers will be working with the government to review the model before releasing it. There's also talk that I've heard that they're discussing giving 5% share on Anthropic to the government. I'm not sure about this one. And if it was just company, it would be okay. It would be fine. We kind of would move over that. And so OpenAI did the same thing. They launched on June 26th to a very limited number of partners, which was vetted by the US government. And again, they are not launching the model publicly immediately. It is predicted to come out on the week of July 9th, I think. So we'll see if it comes out then. But still, that means that two biggest frontier AI providers in the world now have to go and show the models to the government for approval before releasing them. And that's how the frontier ships now. So honestly, I see three paths from here. So the path one, I think, is the worst case scenario, that the capability exists, but the public doesn't get it at all. Now, for now, it's not the case. We're getting Fable and we're getting the new 5.6 soon. But I could see how in the nearest future, if a model release comes out that is much more capable than Fable, the government might restrict it. So yeah, I'm not really sure if in the future, the most capable models in a year or two from now will be public at all. And this could be the case. But turning to a more optimistic note, Path 2 and 3 is where we get the access. Path 2 is when we get the access, but the access is a limited version of the model. So take a look at this. Mythos 5 came out a long time ago, and they gave access to it to a specific number of organizations that can access the full capability without any limitations. We get Fable 5, which was throttled and then throttled again. So thus, our version of Mythos is called Fable, which won't do a lot of things that Mythos can do. What that means for you is that what can happen in the future is those frontier capabilities, frontier things that AI can do, might be gatekept for specific organizations, but the model itself in a kind of a throttled, more limited way, is released to everybody else. It just will refuse to do the things that you want it to do sometimes, which for most use cases, for most people, is fine. So path 3, I think, is the most realistic, at least for now. For the nearest future, is where every model gets released to the public, but with a time delay. So instead of doing it the way it used to work before, where you create an incredible model, you release it whenever you want to everybody, you now have to release it to government to test it. And the US government already said that you have to have 30-day access to the government to test it and to approve it. So thus, you will just get it, but with a delay. That's not the worst case scenario. You still get the great model. You still can use it. It just has to be evaluated. Although the way that I think about this is that the likely scenario is a combination of path 2 and path 3, where the models are evaluated, released later to the public in a limited version. Of course, unless we get another capability jump, such as Opus to Fable and then Fable to something else, then maybe government decides to, in general, not allow access to this model to the public. I can imagine that happening for sure. Now that said, soon enough, regular models from Frontier and open source labs will be able to cover most of the use cases regular consumers like you and I have. We already see that with GLM 5.2. That basically came out with a storm of everybody saying this is as good as Opus 4.7. It's being compared to Sonnet 5, and it runs locally for free. So in about 6 months, I imagine the future where 80% or 90% of the regular consumer use cases are solved by local AI or solved by smaller models that don't require this frontier intelligence. And to be fair, if you ask around in your AI circle, everybody knows how Fable is incredible and how good it is and how everybody wants to use it. But if you go out and ask anybody else who knows about AI, who uses it, but doesn't really use it as much and is not a power user as all of us, they don't know what Fable is, or even if they know, they don't know what to do with it. There's no use case for them. So these frontier models are becoming more and more advanced for use cases like advanced coding, biotech, research, science, all of the stuff that most of us won't need. So will it really matter that those frontier models are not released to the public? Maybe it won't even matter at all. So these are my current thoughts on the future of AI model releases from Frontier Labs. They will either be released and public won't get them, or we will see a scenario like with Fable 5 and Mythos, where a public model is a more restricted, limited version of that. And the third path is where it is released but with a delay. Likely it's a combination of path 2 and path 3 at the same time. But I would love to hear what you think about AI model releases and where it's headed, so comment down below and don't forget to subscribe and like the video. So thank you for watching and I'll see you in the next one.